Welcome to the LowCarbUSA podcast, where we seek to inspire you to help us build this community. I'm Doug Reynolds.
And this is Pam Devine.
Hey, so I'm here this morning with Diane Beem and her daughter, Kyra. And I got hold of her and heard her story, and it was pretty amazing. So I thought, hey, let's get you on the podcast and let you tell everybody, about this amazing thing that happened to you. So why don't you just go ahead and tell us how it all started and how it ended up being such a good thing for Kyra as well.
Okay, so my story is pretty, I would say pretty a typical story in the low carb universe. I had all kinds of ailments, hindsight being 20/20, obviously. So I was in my 30s, I was diagnosed with PCOS and insulin resistance. As a young person, I was frequently sick, lots of infections, lots of intestinal gut problems, all kinds of mysterious symptoms that I just couldn't seem to make go away. And then that was in the late 80s, early 90s. So, still in the high, low fat, high fiber, that was the way to go. That's what we were all doing. And we were all brainwashed into thinking that, we just got to pile on the vegetables and everything will be fine. And that just kind of, I think that compounded things for me. Anyway, long story short, when I was diagnosed with PCOS, it came through a fertility specialist. And so it was kind of a shock to have a fertility specialist tell me he's going to put me on diabetes medication. Very confusing. And I remember just sitting there saying, well, are you telling me I have diabetes? I have what? And he said, well, you're just going to be on this medication for the rest of your life and then don't worry about it. And so, a little shocking, walking out of that, my head was just spinning. And long story short, I ended up having twins, and that's a whole different kind of shock.
I can imagine.
After I had 3 kids under 3, and after things settled down for a little bit, I actually discovered Dr. Bernstein's The Diabetes Solution randomly one day in a bookstore. And so I thought, well, I've been through it all already. Nothing's working for me. And this guy at least he's an MD. I'm going to read his book and see if it helps. I was pretty impressed that he actually had a whole section on PCOS. So I thought, okay, this guy is maybe for real. So I just applied myself to his low carb method, and it just seemed like everything turned around for me. Everything. Even my hormones changed after a solid year on a very low carb diet. Everything came into place. My cycles were completely regular after never being regular in my entire life. And so that was good. Life was good. I was in the low carb way of eating, and all my ailments were going away, and I was feeling great. So, I was very busy with 3 kids, homeschooling. And so that brings us back to the day.
Well, wait, you before that, you had Natasha.
Right. Well, right. I got pregnant with the 4th, thanks to Dr. Bernstein's low carb way. Right. So one day we were doing some science experiments, and I was testing my blood sugar, as I usually do before lunch. And Kyra said, hey, that's science too. We should all do that.
I just thought it was cool because it was this little meter, this little piece of computer equipment, and she's putting her blood into it. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool, how old was that at the time? I was like
9.
9, yeah.
9.
I was like, ooh, that looks cool. We should do that.
Yeah.
So I got my brother Dylan to do it with me, of course.
Yeah. And then, so what happened was,
he tested first.
Right.
His was normal.
His was normal. Yeah.
Like that. And then I tested, and it read high. So we ended
It
up
said
having,
HI,
Yeah.
and I had never seen that on my meter. I didn't know what it meant.
so we ended up calling the number that's like on the back of those test strip bottles,
Yeah.
call 1-800 da 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 da.
Yeah.
And so we did, and the lady on the other side of the phone, she's like, well, that means your blood sugar, your daughter's blood sugar's above 600.
Yeah.
Oh,
She didn't even say that. She said, you need to get her in. So after I hung up the phone with her, I got my pediatrician on the phone. It wasn't actually the pediatrician, it was the nurse. But the story was she found the story so bizarre, I guess, that she didn't really, I'm not sure she even believed me. She said, why don't you just bring her in on Monday?
Yeah.
And I said, the lady on the support call just told me to go to the ER.
So yeah, what we did was because of that, my mom immediately put me on like a really low carb. Just I guess at that time, not temporary, but
Yeah.
kind of, because we hadn't gone to the hospital yet, and she knew that that's what worked for her. We just put her on lots of water. Lots of water,
no carbs,
and
no
just
grains,
meat.
no I think
sugar,
meat and eggs.
Meat, eggs, some vegetables.
And her blood sugar actually
we got it down to 127.
Yeah, it did come down into kind of like a normal range.
127
high
was the
normal.
lowest we got it. It was between probably like 290 and 127.
So then at that point, I was thinking, well, I don't know what this is. This could be type 1 or type 2, not sure.
But I was like, at the time, I was 60 pounds.
Well,
so
that's what, yeah. And when we finally went in and they started asking me all the questions, has she been peeing a lot?
I remember
weight loss and all of this. And it just kind of like all came together.
I was just, really skinny. And I just remember being, just like really thirsty all the time, and then peeing all the time, and being hungry all the time. And obviously those are three really major symptoms. So yeah, we eventually did get to the pediatrician's office, and they tested my blood sugar, and I don't know what it was. They didn't. I don't
even remember. I think I was in too much shock. But they just said, right, we're going to admit you.
The first thing they started me on, obviously, was insulin. I wasn't in DKA when I was admitted.
Right. So we were lucky. She was not.
I wasn't in
not anywhere as sick as most children are when they present with type 1.
Yeah, so they just gave me a rather large dose of insulin.
Yeah.
And but the first thing they gave me to eat was
Okay. So here's where it starts. So we're driving down and we're talking because she knows that, I'm way into the Bernstein thing, and so I said to her, you know what? You're going to be stabilized. You're going to get insulin, and we're just going to do whatever they tell us, because that's the most important thing right now.
So what happened was we got to the hospital, and, I had gotten the whole speech of, smile and wave and do what they tell you. And we did.
Yeah.
But the first thing they gave me to eat, like the next morning, was
low carb muffin. It was
it wasn't a low carb. It wasn't a low carb muffin. It was
a
regular muffin.
Fat-free muffin.
It was a fat-free muffin, a bowl of Cheerios with skim milk. I think that was it. Really.
Yeah. So the meals were ridiculous.
Oh, plus like a piece of toast.
Yeah. No. The meal.
Not butter.
Yeah.
Margarine.
Right. She was 60 pounds at the time. 60 pounds.
No meat, no eggs.
So they were giving her this food that was essentially all sugar and highly refined carbs.
Yep.
100 grams of carbs in a meal. And
the only meat I got was when I got a mini cheeseburger for lunch.
Yeah. And it was frightening because, we witnessed her blood sugar going
down,
just skyrocketing after a meal.
No,
then they, give her the sledgehammer of the fast-acting insulin.
Well,
then she would go down into the 30s and 40s. Then they would come back and give her a gigantic glass of orange juice, which would shoot her up again. And it was really like a nightmare, sitting there going, oh my gosh, this is just like what he said. We're living it right now. And then
we had to sit through what was she, the dietitian?
Yeah.
The dietitian
Yeah.
explained to us the logistics of why this works for diabetics,
Oh.
and why I shouldn't eat fat, and I should be eating fat-free butter. And
What is fat-free butter?
yeah, what is
Yeah.
it's hydrogenated oils.
Yeah, I don't
So
know.
it's not a good thing, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we sat through that, listened to all that for how long was I there?
2 days.
2 days.
2 days.
Yep.
And, but I think
then-
we started giving some pushback with the dietitian, and I think that probably had gotten round to the doctor, because by the time he talked to us, he was annoyed, I think, at I don't know, us having our own ideas
He was annoyed that we
about
weren't-
diet.
Yeah.
And he was,
Informing
really
TV.
pushing me. He was saying, everything is going to change. He said, you're going to get rid of the butter. You're going to get rid of the bacon or whatever you're eating at home.
That made me sad.
Yeah. It's going to be, low fat, heart healthy. And he kept, kind of putting out these platitudes, which was very frustrating to me, because I had already really kind of dug into
You knew
the
what you
science
knew.
of it. And but of course I didn't want to, I don't know. I wasn't going to
Press your
challenge
luck.
him
Yeah.
so much, and I was thinking to myself, all right, we'll just go home and we'll do our thing, and we're going to survive this. Right. And that's what we did. We took her home. We did Bernstein's diet. We got her down to a 5% A1C fairly quickly. And like I said, she wasn't in DKA. So she was, I think we managed that pretty well. But they were getting wind of what we were doing, and they were very angry.
So what happened next was
Yeah, well, there were a number of conversations.
Yeah.
Between the doctor and the social worker and all of these people. So the doctor, like I said, he was annoyed that we weren't following the low-fat diet. The diabetes educator told me that they keep the kids at between 7.5 and 8.5 A1C, which translates to a blood sugar
an average
of,
blood sugar of like
200. And,
75.
so I would sit there in the office and I would say, no, damage starts. We know damage starts at 140, So and I said, why don't they deserve normal blood sugars? Normal blood sugars are between 80 and 120, and so I think the more I spoke, the deeper hole I dug.
So
for
after
myself.
after those kinds of conversations, went on for a little while. They
wanted to set up a meeting with the social worker, with Kyra,
alone without
Yeah.
my parents.
and we said, no, that's not going to happen. And then they said, then they brought up homeschooling. We happened to be homeschooling, so they said, this is even more, This is definitely a reason why she needs a social worker, because you're homeschooling. And at that point, I just thought, this is bad.
Because I'm not in school, they can't have any.
This is bad.
Over.
So I ended up making a call to Homeschool Legal Defense, who represents homeschoolers in situations like this. So I thought, all right, well, I had a message into them, and then I was just kind of thinking, wondering. Well, we did mention that we were in contact with Dr. Bernstein, and the MD, the endocrinologist, was like, I don't know who that is. Honestly, I think he was lying. I honestly think he was lying. And so, my concern was, this needs to be approached holistically.
Okay.
She deserves the best nutrition possible.
You get to what happened.
Long story short, they sent us a letter. He charged me with medical neglect. He said he was going to call DHHS and report me for medical neglect. And so at that point, I got that letter. It was like the floor dropped out under my feet. And so I got back with Homeschool Legal Defense and explained what was going on. And thank God, they got involved, and they said, no worries. We're going to write them a cease and desist letter. You know, they're going way outside of their jurisdiction, you know, talking to you about the homeschooling and forcing a social worker and all this kind of stuff. So that they resolved that for us. But then it left this big problem of, you know, how do we get appropriate care for her? Because we're in an area, a rural area, and like I said, there's one practice that is doing this, that is, you know, within a reasonable driving distance for us. And so I had many conversations with many practitioners. This went on for months and months. In the immediate interim, luckily my father's a physician. So I said to him, look, take this book, Bernstein's book, read it cover to cover and get back to me. Tell me if I'm crazy or if this is the right way to go.
So he read it and, you know,
he agreed with us. Yeah. He said, you know what, this guy's right on the money. So he said, in the interim, I'll supply the insulin. You keep looking. He said, maybe you'll find someone in New Hampshire, maybe you'll find someone in Massachusetts. It'll be a pain, but it's worth her having the optimal care. And so that's what we did. We kind of just cobbled together whoever we could. We met some great people, some awesome naturopaths that really were on board with Bernstein's approach for type 1 and type 2 diabetes. And so that's what we did. We kind of just cobbled together our own team, and we got through that.
So that was a interesting experience to say
it
the
was
least.
it was a painful experience. It was you know, just arrogance run amok completely. And this, you know, this endocrinologist, you know, he made a few phone calls to the naturopath that we were working with, and
eventually the naturopath,
those calls were not pleasant. The naturopath got very nervous, and he's like, you know, the endocrinologist basically was telling me I'm intruding on his territory. It was terrible.
So that's my Instagram, Kyra Gone Keto. It's Kyra Gone Keto. So, you know, if anyone wants to check that out.
especially the younger people, you know, because we can talk till we're blue in the face, but if someone if someone their own age is telling them about it, that's so totally different.
I understand that. I understand, you know, a lot of teenagers are probably like,
yeah. So if you're a youngster with type 1, Kyra Gone Keto. If you're a parent with a child that is type 1, Kyra Gone Keto, because both of you need to learn about this and see how it can work for a child, and because especially with type 1, that's when a lot of the time, somewhere during that childhood, that you discover that your child is type 1. And how do you deal with it?
It's hard.
So thank you so much for coming on here and telling your story, and
for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Hey, you know, this is why I started doing this, is because I want to start putting out real stories of real people that will help other real people to actually do it.
That's important, yeah.
Because the science is critical. But at the end of the day, once we know that this is the right thing, to actually do it is a totally different story. So thanks for helping us to get that right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doug.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people take a look at the conference registrations, and I think they immediately assume that, you know, from a distance, that these might be money-making endeavors that we're doing with these conferences. And, you know, it's hard to admit, and it's hard to tell people that we really aren't making any money from these. All 11 of the events that we've done have not been a profitable endeavor. We've literally had to dip into our credit, basically. It wasn't anything. It wasn't like we actually had a pocket to dip into and put money into. We've had to take loans and get a lot of credit for these events. So any little bit that you can help, every ticket that's sold, every little bit of $1 a month in a Patreon account will help us to fund our endeavors and fund the programs so that we continue to do some of these other things that are free content. The project management that we're doing on the clinical guidelines will really go a long way.